The attribution theory is probably one of the most interesting theories that we've covered this semester because I feel like you can use it in your day-to-day life, such as in the workforce and in your social life, also in your personal life. This theory helps put perspective into why people say the things they say, why they act the way they act, or why they process the information in front of them the way they process it. I think that being able to look at this theory from both sides, there are positive and negatives, that help people understand exactly why they immediately come to the reactions they come to, why they immediately state the things they state, and then have that second reaction of trying to break down the process of understanding what was just said. The attribution theory can be beneficial in the workforce, for example, when handling employees that are difficult or have committed actions that require consequences, or being faced in a position where you have to make a decision and trying to figure out exactly what that decision, the best route should be. With the attribution theory, you can begin to analyze what your immediate thoughts would be. What is your immediate reaction to what is in front of you? Sometimes I like to think that you can take that immediate reaction and break it down and say, why did I make that original assumption? And then break it down into a psychological process and then information, and then proceed, is this an emotional response or is this a logical response? When dealing with people at work who can be difficult or frustrating, or if you're posed with a position where you have to make a decision, I would say that this is a great theory to approach the problem or the situation and trying to figure out if your reaction or your action is stemmed from emotions or logic. In your social life, it could be learning to filter what you say, because not everybody has the same opinions. And being a almost college graduate and working a what I call a real world job, I have learned that there are some things that you can have opinions about, and there are some things you can say out loud, while there are other things that you can have a quiet opinion about. And using the attribution theory to work through and figure out why I would immediately say something when, for example, someone strikes up a conversation about the last presidential debate, and I immediately jump to an emotional response of, well, that's stupid, or you obviously weren't watching the same thing I was watching, because that's quickly an emotional response. Why did I have that response? And where is the other person coming from? Why did they say the sky is green? Well, you're wrong. It's blue. But why did I jump to my answer and conclusion? And why did the other person jump to their answer and conclusion? Which that's a very basic breakdown of that situation. But I think in theory, the idea of looking at why you immediately jump to something and breaking it down to where the logical point is and learning how to either rephrase your emotional response or learning to control the emotional objections that you say. In a personal, not just social, but a personal relationship, I think that especially in a context of a marriage, would help someone learn to approach an argument better, learn to understand why their spouse, or if there's children in play, why a child would say X, Y, or Z. It would help them be able to understand the emotional response from all parties involved, but then how to respond themselves. The negatives of the attribution theory is that some people think that no matter what information is presented, say, for example, John says that the sky is green, and Mary says the sky is blue, and Mark says the sky is red. And someone else jumps in the conversation and immediately starts screaming about why the sky is purple. To understand their arguments is one thing, and then to be presented with information does not necessarily mean that John or Mark will understand why the sky is actually blue. They may still have their own personal opinions, even though that the facts of information have been presented to them, their opinions have stayed the same. The theory also can take it a little too far into research, where someone might overanalyze everything that's being said and break down too many of their thoughts and responses and then catch themselves where they don't engage in conversations, or they hold back certain information, or they have the wrong emotional responses because they're too busy trying to analyze why their response is their own response before they actually say it. Another thing with the attribution theory is trying to associate those different emotions and responses into real world situations and at faulting blame for them, such as, well, I said that because of a personal experience that you would give a crutch to yourself for rather than a logical explanation. The book actually uses an example in here about the fundamental attribution error. And for an example in the book, it talks about test taking, where one student says, man, that test was really hard. And someone says, man, I aced that test. The person who aced the test could, in error, assume that the person who said the test was hard and proceeded with a lower grade received that grade because they didn't study hard enough. Well, you think you aced the test and you score a low score. It's because the test really was too hard, not because you didn't study hard enough. And so that would be a disadvantage to that situation and something that you would take a personal crutch for instead of analyzing the situation fairly and balanced on both sides. But I think that the actual theory itself is very helpful in letting people become informed of how they react to certain situations. And I think not just, it doesn't pertain to a certain age group. I think that you could use that for any age group to show how you react to certain things. I know that I have found that this has been interesting for me because I work with a large group of very culturally diverse people and people from the ages of 18 to 60. And I work in a very demographically challenged part of a city. And I think that reading this theory and doing a couple of other speeches on this theory, I really have grasped to the idea of trying to understand and break down why I say the things I say, or why is this person saying what they're saying? Where did they get their information from, or where is this emotion stemming from? I think that's really been able to help me work in an environment with people that are diverse and geographically raised in different areas. They were environmentally raised in a different manner, and so that everyone's responses are unique. I think that this attribution theory is something that could be broken down and expanded farther into research and looked at to how to make this a little bit better of a situation for a learning environment, but not taken into so far of an overdrive of overanalyzing everything.